I am really excited to film this video. This is how I mix skin tones in acrylic paints. This is how I personally mix it. This is what I have tried to do. This is what has worked for me. I don't paint portraits or realistic things all the time, but when I use skin colors in my work, this is how I do it. So some colors that you're going to need are white, black, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, raw umber, cyan and cerulean blue, and Naples yellow. Now, it is true that you can get brown and other skin tone colors by mixing the primaries together. However, in acrylics, they dry very quickly, and I find that having this limited palette for just mixing skin tones, it cuts down on the mixing time, which cuts down on the drying time. I also take these colors and I apply it to oil paints, but oil paints dry extremely slowly because, you know, they're oils and not acrylics, they're not water-based. But using these color palettes in acrylic, I can mix my colors faster, and I don't have to worry about them drying, getting chunky, getting the film on them, or something like that. For the first row, I'm going in and I'm adding white and black to each one of the base colors. When you do this, you get a wide range that you can use for highlights and lowlights. You can also mix them in together, which is going to be the second row of me taking colors and mixing them and then adding white and black on either side of the base color. Another reason I chose this particular color palette is because you can get undertones. It's not just playing with the primaries until you get that right red or that right yellow or cool tone or neutral. You can get yellow, red, neutral, cool tone, and even olive tone skin undertones using this color palette. There are a couple of rules for some of the colors, and I will explain that when I get there. I did mess up a little bit because I completely forgot about them. I was just so excited to mix these paints together. So I want to talk about yellow ochre. I feel like yellow ochre is the base for this limited color palette. Yellow ochre can be mixed into the rest of them, and it creates a very nice shade range. I feel like just using yellow ochre on its own with white and black creates a nice shade range. I feel like when you mix it with raw sienna or burnt sienna or raw umber, you just get more depth and more options. I feel like this color palette is very, very generous, not only in the amount of colors that you need, but the amount of colors that you can get out of it. If you are starting off in acrylics and you buy a set of acrylics, there's a good chance that all of these colors will be in there. I know that if you buy the Winsor Newton 12 milliliter Galleria set, the student grade, all of the colors that I mentioned will be in there, and you can mix them to get all of these skin tones. If you're buying them on their own and you just want to have the primaries but be able to mix skin tones easier, I would definitely say primaries, yellow ochre, and raw and burnt sienna. Here I'm mixing raw umber and black together. When you are mixing raw umber for a skin tone, you cannot add white into it, and I did that because I was so excited. When you add white into it, you get very gray undertones, and it just looks weird. If you're going for like a zombie or a sickly undertone, yes, sure, go for it, but that's not what I do. I use raw umber when I'm painting very deep skin tones. Next to that is Naples yellow, and for Naples yellow you can only add white into it. When you add black into it, it is a very muddy color and it's not very flattering. Next is Cyan or Cerulean blue. What I'm using is Cerulean blue, and I use this for deep, dark, rich skin tones for blue undertones, and it looks amazing. I also use this in combination with yellow ochre for olive undertones, and you will see that. So here's the first row done, and a good rule to remember is that once you have added black into a skin tone, you cannot add white into it. It will turn your color gray no matter what. Vice versa, if you add black into it, you cannot add white. If you add white, you cannot add black. It will ruin the beautiful color that you have mixed and make it gray. Here, I'm just squeezing out my paints onto a palette, mixing them together to get a base tone. The first one that I'm doing is yellow ochre and raw sienna. When you mix those two colors together, you get a base tone, and it's a very yellow undertone. Now I'm going to start adding white into the paint to get a lighter skin tone, to see what else I can get. And I just keep adding white and getting a lighter skin tone that still has a yellow undertone to it. And I do this a couple of times for each of the paints to show a gradient. Again, my mixing skills are not the best. This is just me practicing. The next color combination is yellow ochre and burnt sienna. This is a very red undertone, and this is something that I default to a lot when I don't know what skin color I want to make my character. Then I start adding white into it, again, to get a lighter skin tone. There are definitely shades in between what's on my paper. This is just me mixing for demonstration. Here I started to spray my palette because those pesky acrylics were drying, but as you can see, I've already mixed a couple of shades and this video is sped up. So the paints were sitting on my palette, just drying. Next we have yellow ochre and raw umber, and you get a very nice neutral base tone. However, you cannot add white to this color, and that is what I did. At least I showed you guys a gradient, I guess. It gives you a very dull skin color. Next, off camera, I have black on my palette, and I'm just mixing black into a separate section of the base color to show darker skin tones. I'm trying really hard not to mix white in with it because I don't want it to turn it gray. And those are some very rich tones, and you can definitely get shades in between. I'm doing the same thing with the yellow ochre and burnt sienna mixture. And again, that is my default mixture for skin tones. That's just what I paint with and what I'm most comfortable with. And I just go in adding black into it, and I'm adding a very small amount of black into it because it gets very dark very quickly. Now for raw umber and yellow ochre, when you mix black into it, you get those deep, rich shades, and I really wish that I would have checked to adjust my camera so you can see how rich and deep these are up close. They're so beautiful. I'm also going to have a really high definition picture available for free on my Ko-Fi for you to download this chart and to look at it if you want to study it. If not, that's fine, but it's up to you. Next is my favorite part. When I learned how to mix olive undertones, I was so excited because I just was ecstatic. Yellow ochre and cerulean or cyan, either one of those will get you very nice olive, like a very nice olive green color. And you can mix this with white or with black, and then you can mix it into one of the top 3 shades that we did. I personally recommend only mixing it into the yellow undertones, but if you tweak and work with the colors, you can really get a realistic undertone in the skin tone. Now for those deep, cool undertones, cyan or cerulean mixed with burnt sienna. I should have checked and gotten a closer, shot of this, but this is for deep, dark, rich skin, black almost. And there's something about mixing your own black that's just amazing. Even though I did use a little bit of black for this, I mixed cyan and burnt sienna together, and I barely had to add any black to it. I could have just left it alone. It would have been my own black that I could then use, and it would go really well with the rest of the skin tone sets. So after mixing my own black that's it. That's how I mix my skin tones together, and that's how I get a very good shade range for someone who's not that into portraiture but is trying to learn. I'm going to go in, I'm going to add some notes to it. I'm going to take better pictures than what's in the video. I just ran out of time during my filming. I'm going to have a high definition picture, upload it onto my Ko-Fi for free. I'm also going to link all of the colors and videos that I use to help me, just in case this wasn't helpful for you or you want to learn more. What works for me may not work for you, and that is 100% okay. So again, I'm going to link some people who helped me down below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.